Okay, hello everyone. This is Gio from Rebalancing Health, and today I'm here with Suzi Nevell. Thank you, Suzi.
Oh, thank you for having me, Gio. It's great to be here.
Oh, great. So Suzi, you are a physiotherapist for a very long time, and also you've been working with the CHEK Institute for a long time. So tell us a little bit about you, and yes.
Yeah, you're right. I have been doing this for a long time. And it's about 32, this is probably 33 years since I've trained as a physiotherapist. And I had a quite quick background in manual therapy, learned some acupuncture techniques, did a lot of sports physiotherapy initially, and then with my postgraduate manual therapy training, did a bit more spinal education as well, and incorporated that into my work. And at about probably in 2000, I started working for Paul Chek. I moved to San Diego and worked at the Institute. And I had met Paul just the year before. And luckily for us at that time, he was coming to New Zealand quite a bit, as his wife Penny was from New Zealand, and he had quite a good following here, which was really great. So we got some very early information from CHEK, and I feel very, very lucky that I was in that place to be able to get that information, because I truly love the musculoskeletal model that CHEK has created, and in those early days we got a lot of it, which was really, really fantastic. So yeah, I took a sabbatical once I had a child back in 2009, after trying to teach one of the high-level CHEK practitioner courses for 8 days with a 7-month-old baby, and trying to breastfeed and pump and teach a class, and I just nearly lost my mind. So I pretty much just went to and said to Paul, look, I really need to stop doing this. And so he said, look, I don't want you to quit. I'll give you a sabbatical. I don't care how long it takes. You know, you can take 10 years, whatever you want. And actually it was probably around 10 years when I did come back and offered to start teaching again. And as you know, Gio, we did that course last year online, 5 days online, which was actually a huge challenge, because I've grown up traditionally with the CHEK Institute doing everything in person. So shifting online was that was big. It was great though. It seemed to work quite well. Hopefully you enjoyed that course.
I loved it. I mean, in the end, because of the time difference, I think us guy, we actually, our student, we actually got much more of your time, because because of the time that we were up and the time that we were finished. And definitely, you know, you're an amazing teacher, and you know what your stuff. And I don't think a screen is a big obstacle for you to you know, translate and you know, bring about what you're talking about, and your experience goes over and behind the screen.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It was a couple of sleepless nights trying to imagine how to do it, but we got there.
Yeah, totally. Wow, fantastic. And you actually coming from a sport background. Did you go to California or the US because of a scholarship, was it?
No, I didn't actually. You mean about my sporting background?
Yeah, your sporting background.
This was before I met CHEK too, long before. So I was a trampolinist, and so I was competing at a high level, international level, back in the 80s. Here am I showing my age? But at that time, you know, we'd spent 4 years preparing for a world championship title, and traveled to Japan to the world championships, which was, my sport trampoline wasn't in the Olympics until the 2000s. And so back then we just had a world championship. And what happened was we just had no science behind our training, our hydration, no science behind our food. We were eating at McDonald's.
Wow.
I ended up cramping in my quads so badly that I literally couldn't compete. We were meant to be up for a medal, and we ended up, I think we were fourth, but super disappointing. And I forever wanted to kind of make up for that after training as hard as I had and living that life where you're, 5 days a week on a trampoline. I just loved that I had the opportunity after meeting CHEK to actually now be able to teach that and be able to make sure that people who are athletes, or even people who are weekend warriors, actually do know how to take care of all those aspects, because you just can't just rely on exercise as a way of getting peak performance. You have to incorporate all aspects of, lifestyle foundations. And I felt really grateful to have met CHEK and to have been given the opportunity to take care of my own health and my own life through his suggestions, to then be able to pass that on and kind of, as he always talked about, walk the walk, talk the talk. And so I love that I had that opportunity to meet him, because I think I'm in a good place now because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And and I mean, like you said, you were a physiotherapist before you got to the CHEK Institute. And how long were you a physiotherapist before you met Paul and you met the CHEK methodology?
Yeah, so I graduated in 1989, and then I met CHEK in 2000. So there were quite a few years there, and I was working very traditionally as a physiotherapist, just where people came in, they just wanted me to treat them. But I also used to get quite a bit of anxiety around that. I used to feel the pressure of the responsibility of that. And so much so that I thought that I actually wanted to leave the profession.
Oh, wow.
I just thought, every Sunday night I'd be panicking about work the next day, because and I've mentioned this before to some people, where I was taking on the role of taking care of these people. And so what CHEK taught us is the coaching model, and about, taking your ego out of the response, but doing the best to educate your clients and to ideally treat them, but treat them in a way that is educating them and treating them how to take care of themselves. And Paul used to say to me, what happens when you treat someone to dinner? What do? He's like, they take no responsibility for paying for that or organizing the food. You treat them, you do it all for them. He's like, well, that's what you're doing in your treatment model. So now let's shift that and make the person do a bit more work and be responsible for their own health. Now that was great for me, because what that meant now was that I didn't have that anxiety, and suddenly I started really loving what I was doing. So it was a great shift, and it kept me in the field. I literally was about to quit. And, there was a meeting I had with CHEK in New Zealand before I joined on, and I really didn't understand truly what he did. And, when we met, quite by coincidence, in the gym that I had a small physiotherapy room in, and I was treating people there, and he would come and work out in that gym, of all places in New Zealand. He came to that gym, and he spent about an hour talking with me about his model, and asked if I would come and do his first certification. And I literally said, look, I don't think I'll get anything from it, which is very arrogant. And he was really humble, and he just said, hey, let's have a deal. If you come to this course and you feel like that at the end of the course, I'll give you your money back. And I was like, right, deal. And so I did go to San Diego. It was a big deal at the time. It was very expensive for me. I had to borrow a lot of money. I did go to San Diego, and at the end of that course, I walked into his office, and I was like, hey, what do I have to do? I want to work for you. This is amazing. So my introduction to exercise was my biggest change, because as a physio at that time, my knowledge about exercise and how to design programs and put a science behind it, I knew nothing about that. I sat in that class where, I didn't even come wearing sports gear. I wore a dress to a totally practical class about exercise, and I didn't even understand what reps and sets and tempos were. my training back then wasn't as good as physiotherapy training is now, and they learn a lot more. But even still, what I learned from CHEK is above and beyond what a lot of physios will be getting now. So yeah, it was a great introduction to a whole new field, and it just opened my eyes to other treatment approaches. And that treatment approach was to actually teach clients how to exercise and get the goals that they wanted based on the science I was putting behind their exercises.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Such an amazing experience. Yeah, I mean, if I made you change your mind on your profession and how to apply, I mean, it must have been quite incredible.
Well, I used to find here that clients would come back every year with the same injuries.
Yeah.
Almost to the month of the same time of the year. And I was like, what is this weird pattern? What keeps happening? And they're stuck in this cycle. And so I didn't really have strategies for how to break that cycle, because it would just be treatment to make them feel better, and then they go back to doing what they were doing with no kind of preparation for that job or for that sport, no strengthening. It was just treat the part that hurts. And CHEK really opened my eyes to also looking at the cause and looking behind. And that was in a very musculoskeletal way. It was looking at where else in the body is driving the current injury. So I moved out of that model of just looking at the injured part and just working on it. I looked at what was driving that injured part to be maybe overloaded or to be weak. And then throwing in the lifestyle, the food and the mental, emotional, the sleep, the hydration, the community, it all linked into helping create a place of health that the traditional model that I had been working in just wasn't cutting it. Yeah.
And I remember you saying as well to us that you, for instance, exactly in that way, also nowadays with your clients, you use manual therapy as a treat, right? Is not is a treat for your clients. And so I mean, I know the reason behind it, but please expand and tell me more. I mean, I'm sure I know a little bit, and I can learn a lot from what you're about to say. So,
well, manual therapy is to me really important. It's a really important part of that whole package. If someone has an injury, it's also quite an important part of a package of care if someone has muscle imbalances, because ultimately I don't really believe that you can get the best strength response or the best stretching response out of tissues that are not healthy. Like if they have, if they've got muscle fibers that feel very fibrotic, or let's say they've had an old injury and it's healed in a way, when you cook spaghetti and you forget to stir it and it's all
that doesn't happen in Italy.
Of course it doesn't happen. I bet you it does. Anyway, I've forgotten to stir the spaghetti before, and you get these clumps, right? Especially when you're going gluten-free and you try gluten-free pasta, which probably doesn't happen in Italy either. So you don't stir your spaghetti, and you get these like clumps of spaghetti, and they're all kind of like gluggy. It's like they're held together by glue. So I kind of have this image in my head, because when I'm working on people, I'm visualizing the tissue, and I get this image in my head where I can feel this kind of fibers that are all kind of stuck together, because when swelling fluid sits around, it kind of gets really thick and gluggy. And so you want to be able to help move that make that tissue healthier and get the spaghetti fibers separate and kind of muscle. It won't happen like that, but this is a visualization, and that I
absolutely
say to my clients, it's like, imagine you haven't cooked the spaghetti and we're trying to like get these fibers to be clean and loosen up, and then they contract better and they can lengthen and shorten. So the manual therapy, I think, is super important. And if there's old scar tissue in there, you know, scars can shut muscles down for months and months after. In fact, years after. I've had some clients with old scars from like 10, 15 years ago, including some of scars in the abdominal region, like old appendix scars, ones that maybe had got evicted, or old cesarean scars. They can shut the abdominal wall down for years later. And this person doesn't understand why, you know, their pelvis can't stabilize, or why they keep putting their back out, or why their hips are always tight. So the manual therapy is really important, I believe, for trying to make sure scars are really mobile, and the connective tissue, the tissue between the skin and the muscle, is fibrous-y, and it's very alive. It's quite electric, and it's got like good hydration through it. It's very water-based, and it's like a gel. And so you've got to make that really healthy as well. And kind of manual therapy is great for that. So there's an element of manual therapy and massage being really important. But it's not that sort of massage where you're just, you know, polishing the skin. You're actually getting in and you're really influencing the tissue. And you're also influencing not just muscle, but ligaments and the fascia, as I talked about, in the tendons. So huge value and really important, but it's just one tool in the toolbox of what that person needs. And also somebody, imagine if you've got a client who's really bendy, you know, when we were younger and we called it double jointed, you know, like you can bend your finger right back, or your thumb does funky things. And you, as kids, you used to say, oh, I can bring my shoulder, dislocate my shoulder, or pop my shoulder, and how fun is this? Or like pop their elbows into like hyperextension. Well, people that are really hypermobile like that, they're born with it. They've got really quite lax ligaments. They require super strength, or important strength around the joints, to help control those joints that are moving too much. And so massage sometimes is something that may even shut these people down. So it's really important that we look at the person in a way that we say, is massage right for this person? Will we destabilize them? And another situation where massage may be, you know, not that beneficial is when you've got a muscle that's protecting an injury and it's in a protective spasm, or it's protecting an area that's unstable, like it's not healthy. Yep. And so that protection is important. And if you go stretch or massage that muscle that's in a protective holding pattern, you run the risk of actually worsening the client's symptoms. So you sometimes have to ask yourself, is massage the right thing for this person? And this is something that we learn, one in physiotherapy school, but we also learn at the CHEK Institute as well. So there's a great place for it. I do give it as a treat, but I will say to clients, some of my first clients, if I feel the tissue is unhealthy, I'm like, we need to do this tissue work and get in there with my hands before we do your exercise and clean it out, and then we start the exercise program.
I guess as well is a trait if the client or the person itself also is repetitively coming back with the same issue, right? That is the actual cause of the problem hasn't been addressed, and perhaps it's not the need for the manual therapy.
And there's a lot of clients that want to come in and just get treated. they wonder why they don't get better, and it's like you're only addressing one part of the package here. It was interesting, after we had a really big lockdown in New Zealand, and no one was able to get any soft tissue work, and lots of people were out there doing exercise, which was great. But for the first 6 weeks back out of lockdown, all I did, and I couldn't convince my clients to exercise, was massage. and I just was like, oh my goodness. But people actually had, you know, like a long stretch of time without really having any cleaning out of the tissue, because, you know, they'd been just exercising or just kind of sitting around. And, you know, to get that tissue cleaned out again before they started into a serious program was quite important. Yeah, and also, it's just a technique that also allows people to relax in these heightened states. There was a lot of mental, emotional stress, and sometimes I just do that because it actually gives them some time to themselves and actually is good for them in another way.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. You see, I learned something new.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's all important. Multifaceted approach to the health of the person is I guess, as a CHEK professional, is what is important to look in and recognizing the need of the person itself, and not putting everyone in the same box.
And learning to listen to what that person really needs. Like, we have 2 ears for a reason. We listen more than we speak, and we've got to let our clients talk because they tell us so much. They tell us so much about what's going on.
And I'm curious to get you to talk about women health, and for instance, training, adapting the training to, which is not really well known out there. I mean, there is some information more widely spread coming out and being applied, but as your approach, your knowledge from the CHEK, and as a woman yourself, what are precautions in regard to training around the menstrual cycle, and training in general, I guess, for a woman, which is a bit different because of the hormonal differences that a woman has compared to a man.
Yeah. So, with hormonal flux that we go through as females, it also can influence our stability around the joints. And I think that, on sort of day 1 or day 2 of your cycle, there is a risk that your joints are not quite as stable. And so if you are lifting quite heavy during that period, you need to just make that maybe an active recovery week where you don't increase the loads quite so much on day 1 and 2, not really that whole week. And I think that, for example, if someone's doing a lot of lunge work and they have potentially a pelvis that may not be in balance, or there's a sacroiliac joint or a lumbar joint issue, and they have pain in that area, then I wouldn't want to lunge them on day 1 or day 2 of their period, and make sure that also you just got to acknowledge if there's pain that is with the cycle, or pain that comes before the cycle, or right into those days afterwards. Just acknowledge that you need to be a little bit careful that pain shuts muscles down. And so you have it's reflexive. It's not something you can necessarily control. And so you need to make sure, if there is pain, to try not to push through with too much fast or heavy lifted motions. Just have lots of control. Maybe even you take that day off, because or you make your exercises slightly more supported. Do you go floor based? Do you take yourself out of the standing, more complex exercises? Do you maybe not run that day? Lunging especially, I think, is really quite risky when you've got muscle inhibition and you've got joint hormonal flux creating some slight ligament laxity. Everyone will be different in that. And I think that they would be the 2 really main precautions I would say about exercise day 1 and day 2 with your cycle. And some people get also pain, while they're ovulating. And I think you want to be a little bit careful to then just listen to the body's reaction. If you are somebody who is already really bendy and double jointed, as we call it, or hypermobile, And I can give you a quick show of how you measure that if you'd like.
Yeah.
If someone is hypermobile, then again, just be careful on those days. So this test, it just gives you a score out of 9, and it's not a negative whether you have a high score or a low score. It just is. It's just something that you have. And you literally, you ask your client, can you bring your little finger back in relation to your palm? If you can get 90 degrees, then you score 1.
No.
And then the same with the other hand. If you get 90 degrees, you score another point. So now you're at a possible 2. If you can bring your, I'm just going to stand up. If you can bring your thumb down to your forearm, you'll get a 3, and same on the other side. I used to be able to easily do this, but I can't do it right now because my thumbs are a bit beat up from work. So that's a possible 4. And then the next one is you hold your arms out straight. And if now my arms do not hyperextend, but if your forearm sort of points below your upper arm, you get a point. So you'll see the elbow sort of sits high like this.
Yeah.
Mine doesn't do that. So I don't get a point, and it's on each arm. So now we're at a possible out of 6 out of 9. And I'm scoring, so far I'm scoring a 4 out of 9. Everyone else might be at a different number. The next thing you look at is that you sit down on the floor and you straighten your legs out and you push your knees into the floor. And if you can get your heels off the floor and your knees hyperextend, then you have another score. And I will just show you quickly. I'll just get things out of the way. I'll just show you quickly because my knees do hyperextend. So see, my knees are straight. Now hyperextension is where they go all the way back. And if I turn around, then again, that knee, and see how they look at the front, those knees really reverse. They reverse in their curvature.
Yeah.
So now we're at a possible 8 out of 9. And the last score is that you can bend forwards from your hips, put your palms flat on the floor with your knees straight. And that gives you a 9. Now, most of these are not trainable. You could train that last one to be more flexible to get a point, but generally you can't train your finger to bend that far. You can't train your elbows to hyperextend.
Yeah.
So if you are anywhere around a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 9, then really important for you on those days with your menstrual cycle that you don't go and do big heavy lifts. If you've got pain, especially, no. And also you just minimize those like high steps, box step ups that are high, lunges that are jump lunges or lateral lunges. You just want to really know what your pelvis is doing and be able to have the core strength to hold it, because you haven't quite got that ligament sort of stability holding it. And I would say, I'm a 7 out of 9 on that scale. So stretching is not really a huge part of my pre-exercise workout. I don't want to stretch before I work out. It'll destabilize me. But someone who is a 0 out of 9 and has some real muscle imbalances, they may need to stretch before their program. And if you are high on that scale, then you do very well to get strong and to do slightly heavier lifts, where you also just have to make sure you don't go full to the bottom of the lift and stretch everything out. You got to shorten the movement. So for example, if you were squatting, you just shorten how deep you go, and you don't want to bounce off your ligaments because they're already too mobile. You want to use the muscles to strengthen you, to tighten those joints up and help hold them. Typically people that are really bendy and hypermobile, they feel tight all the time. And so what they do is they go to yoga or they go to stretches, and then they say, oh gosh, I feel good for a day, and then all that tightness comes back. And what the body is sort of doing is that the tightness is protective. It's holding them stiff because their ligaments are lax. They haven't got good muscle strength. And so they keep trying to stretch it at yoga, and like, oh, hang on. The brain's going, what are you doing? I've tightened you up for a reason. Why are you stretching me? So what these people do really well with is getting really strong, and then that muscle tension will let go without having to go and stretch till the cows come home.
So what is the consequence, or is there a consequence on stretching the ligamentous system?
So ligaments are just ligaments do have the ability to get stronger and respond to stress.
Yeah.
But typically when you've had an injury that you've stretched a ligament, they typically don't always return back to their normal shape or the normal tensile loading. So that's when muscles quite often need to be helping and taking over that role of that stability. So, you know, your ligaments are not under your control to contract them, and they are a certain tension. And if you have an injury that stretches a ligament out, like let's say you have an ankle sprain and you stretch the outside ligament of your foot, it doesn't always go back to its normal position. It's kind of like, you know, you've got your cans of beer that are held together by those little plastic rings.
Yeah. And you stretch them out, and
so to get the beer can out, you have to like stretch that ring, and that ring doesn't go back to its shape. Ligaments can be a little bit like that. Now they can tighten up with scar tissue, so that's why when someone dislocates their shoulder, they're put in a sling for 3 weeks to try to shorten it and tighten it if they can. So, you know, once you've had a big joint sprain, you do want to stabilize that area and not overstretch it, because you want to try to shorten that ligament again. And sometimes scar tissue helps in that case. So sometimes the not stirring the spaghetti can actually help tighten you up again. But if you have stretched a ligament badly and it doesn't kind of stabilize back to its original length, you will really need to work on muscle strength to help control that.
Keep that joint in place together.
But your ligaments are really responsive. They need to be warmed up. So, you know, I do a great osteoarticular, which is osteo meaning bone and joint, articular mean joint. I do a great warm up that just gets the joints warmed up before I do any work with lifting with my clients or myself. And I'm trying to actually open up and stretch the ligaments, just pumping them. I don't like to do sustained stretches before I lift. I like to just pump the ligaments, move them, because they're responsive to that. And there are some techniques you can do to actually try to what we call hypertrophy, which is thicken your ligaments. So I think that stretching, a sustained stretch before you do something explosive, can be risky to your tendons and your ligaments. You don't want to be sustaining tension on an area and then try to work it really explosively or under a heavy load. Again, stretching can destabilize things. So we have to be really careful about choosing when we stretch people. For example, if I'm going to do any stretches before I work out, it's because I've found a muscle to be short and tight, and that's the only thing I do. I don't do anything else. And this is where you need people that are quite prescriptive with their exercise programs and the needs that you need. They need to actually really relate to the findings of you, not the findings of a general population. Because we can't just put people into a recipe book and say, this is what you do. We need to really try to assess that person, find out their specific requirements, and then we write the program around that.
Because that's the come into play as well, the training ears of the person, right? Is if
you mean the therapist or the practitioner?
No, for the client or whoever, like you said, you can generalize the things. However, you can't just go online and look at a training program or get a generalized training program, for instance, for calisthenic and doing muscle up or some other exercises that are very complex if you don't have that ability, and doing stiff-legged deadlift, for instance, when you don't have prepared the body right to get to have the ligamental system that is strong enough, to have the muscular system that is strong enough, and have that foundation, and consequently having a tailored program to the individual that consider also the training years of the individual, their lifestyle, and so forth. So that's why
absolutely,
it's fundamental.
And also, you know, when somebody's trying to do something quite advanced like a muscle up, has the person got the relative flexibility to deal with that? A good morning, have they got the hamstring flexibility to do that without bending their back and risking blowing out a disc? So there are certain situations where people will need to really stretch out to allow movement to happen. But I always make sure that that person has, one, the ability, the skill and the ability to do that movement pattern. And the ability comes from actually saying, do you have to stretch this before you do your lift? And actually your lift is always in a controlled environment. It's not done explosively. It's not done at its highest intensity. We always follow a kind of a formula of, you train the flexibility, then you train the stability, then you train the strength, and then you train the power, and you do it in that order so that you are always kind of making sure that each phase beforehand has been addressed, and then you are able to be safe to take that person to the next phase. And sometimes those phases of correcting an issue that is found in their system, or the phase of building up stability, and the phase of doing strength before you go to power, sometimes those phases you can have your client in those for up to 3 to 6 months. And one of the issues I've found with a lot of people going straight into CrossFit environments or going straight into Olympic lifting, and they're doing technique drills right away, and they haven't actually got the base. They haven't given themselves enough time to actually get stability, stamina, then strength, which is loading with movement, before they then skip straight into power and high technique. They haven't even sometimes got the awareness in their body, and they can't actually tell what their body is doing. They can't feel what their body's doing before they start doing these really high grade, really technical movements. So people have to be really patient, and training age comes into that. Like, the training age is literally an age that we use in this environment of how long has a person been lifting for. That's your training age. And if someone's coming in as a beginner and they want to do CrossFit, the first thing I'm going to say to them is, you're looking at 6 to 9 months, maybe a year of preparation before you actually think about going to CrossFit and getting through CrossFit without an injury. I mean, they can go to CrossFit right away, but it's not if they're going to get an injury, it's just a matter of when they're going to get that injury. So it's a great thing for people to do, but they've got to be prepared for it, and they've got to put the time in. This is just jump straight in there. And they have to also take the time to prepare their hormonal system for it. If they're not sleeping, then you're wasting their time, because they'll be lifting the next day on recycled cells that haven't quite given them the hormonal recovery. They haven't had the ability for the muscle to settle and to actually recover. And if they're not eating properly, again, they're going to potentially be inflamed. And so, if they've had a really stressful morning and their adrenaline levels are really high, then it's going to influence their energy systems, and they'll be performing slightly differently. So there's a lot of time and a lot of work that goes into this, and people need to respect that. I will go on forever.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. I mean,
I could go on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is interesting. I guess the health and fitness, the fitness industry is evolving, and obviously better coaches are out there teaching people good technique and etc. But there is still a lot of 8 weeks challenge, especially around this time of the year, that are coming up, and people jump on and they throw themselves into this 8-week challenge of training a lot and following all these other things that perhaps are not specific to the individual, and especially for an individual that doesn't have that training history. It can be an issue. It can be the straw that breaks the camel back.
Totally. And it's interesting, in those 8-week challenges, quite often 8 weeks is a good time for them to pick, actually, because the first 6 weeks of a person who's quite deconditioned starting into an exercise program, is quite there's quite a linear sort of response to your exercises. We actually do quite well, and it's all because your nervous system has been trained, and you're increasing the motor unit firing in your muscles and recruitment. So you're getting quite a fast and a good response. And then luckily at 8 weeks, that program hopefully will stop, because it's after that where the person will plateau, and that's where the technique issues that they have, their body may not be resilient, it may not cope with it anymore, and they start getting towards an injury. So probably the client doesn't even realize, or the person that's doing the 8 week challenge, is that their first 6 weeks, I'm feeling great, this is great. And then if they had kept going to 12 weeks, boom, they might have blown something by then if they didn't have the skill or the preparation. I think one of the biggest things that we don't spend enough time on is working on people's stamina, which is the sort of high volume, low intensity training where you're working some of your muscle fibers that are the workhorses, we call them. They're the slow twitch type 1 muscle fibers, and you need to build up the stamina and learn to hold a static posture safely and well before you then go dynamic. And I think a lot of us go straight into the dynamic move, but we don't know how to hold our body well. And a classic will be seen in a golfer, someone who starts playing golf, and they are having to stand over the ball ready to do a drive, which ultimately is a power movement, and they don't know how to hold their spine in neutral and in a straight position, and then they twist, and they've got, if they're flexing, and as the longer they stay preparing to hit that ball, the more they flex and they drift with gravity, and they end up then trying to do this power motion, and they have no awareness of where straight is, and they have no stamina. Like, I don't allow my clients to do too much dynamic movement until they know how to hold for a minute in that position. Once they can do a good static hold for a minute, then they can start thinking about being more dynamic, and they can learn to hold their spine or hold their joints in neutral while they move other joints. And this is where my training with Guy Voyer, who is a French osteopath who created the ELDOA, ELDOA, it's a French acronym, and it's using 1 minute holds to create fascial tension to try to create space between the vertebrae. But those holds, those 1 minute holds, are really important for people to have to work their spinal muscles, their hip flexors, their shoulder rotators. And I love that as a good sort of introduction to the stability type of work to combine with all our other exercises. And that's been a great tool that I've put in my toolbox in regards to that phase of stability training.
Yeah, I actually done ELDOA and myofascial stretching level 1 and 2, and I running a small class of ELDOA, myofascial stretching, and stretching in general. I try to adapt as much as I possible to the people that come, and so, for instance, let's say, for instance, a person that comes in and it feels like pain or impingement on the arm and on the wrist, let's say, and that would be what is C5, C6.
If C5, 6 is this medial side, if you're talking about pain that or nerve symptoms that originate from the neck, and it's coming from the vertebrae C5, 6, then they may feel symptoms into this part of their hand, and they may feel symptoms into the through the forearm and then along the line of the biceps here. And C5 also feeds, C5, 6 feed the biceps.
And so how like, for instance, an approach like ELDOA, how safe it is to perform an ELDOA for those kind of condition?
It's very safe, because the person is lying down and they're supported, and their head they're teaching their body, they're teaching their mind to try to create length in the neck. So interestingly, when you're lying down and your chest is in a good neutral posture, your head is more neutral, then you can be quite safe to try to create space in those vertebrae. Whereas if you were doing the work sitting, quite often people sit, their front panel, their chest drops, their head comes forward, and now they compress C5-6. So the Aldoa lies them down and it puts them out of that position, and they work on trying to create a long neck while they create tension with their arms. So it's quite safe, and it can involve the nerve mobilization as well. It can, if they learn to not wind it up too much into too much tension, and you can break the Aldoa down into stages of progression based on how able that your client is. I like the Aldoa a lot. It creates an element of strength. It's not just about stretch. I have found with the myofascial stretching, which is very separate to the Aldoa, it's quite good also for people who are really, really mobile or who may not be that strong, because you have to create tension in it. You're not just sitting, stretching and leaning on something like traditional stretches. You actually have to be really aware of what your spine is doing, what your posture is doing. You have to hold yourself up. So you're getting work while you're creating a fascial stretch around the covering of the muscles. So the myofascial is the covering, the fascial covering that covers the muscle. And that's what's very smart. It's very alive, and it kind of almost tells the muscle a little bit what to do. It creates the shape of the muscle. It's great. And I've really enjoyed adding the myofascial stretching as well to the program. I always do myofascial stretching though after exercise. I never do it beforehand. And people who are really quite weak and quite over mobile, I will hold off and do strength work before I will do myofascial stretching, especially if there's a sacroiliac problem. I tend to hold the hip, the iliopsoas, or the hip flexor stretch. I hold it off quite late because it can really pull the pelvis around, and I make sure the hip flexor is strong before we stretch it.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, interesting. And I had a few questions, but one I forgot it. But I got one.
Okay.
I got one about for instance, we briefly said about challenges, but also fasting, and fasting for instance for women, fasting. Tell me.
Okay. So whoopsie, I just knocked my table. So I had a really interesting reaction to fasting, and I was doing the 16-8 fast. So my feeding window was 8 hours. And I think I made the mistake that most people make when they're fasting, that I tried to, in my feeding window, I actually didn't eat enough. I was eating like I would normally eat, which was probably, 3 meals a day. But I realized, you drop one of those meals, you end up having 2 meals in the day, and I wasn't taking on enough calories, especially because I'm so active with my job, and then I would work out or I'd go for a run. So I was starting to get into a calorie deficit. You got to remember with fasting, especially with females, that you're meant to feast when you're in your 8-hour window. You're not meant to still eat normally. You're meant to be able to get the similar number of calories that you would have had if you went fasting in that small window. And this is where females can run the risk of getting all sorts of hormonal dysregulation. There's also some quite important research that's come out of Japan showing that females really should be having protein in the morning, and females don't do well to have a huge break and to fast in a huge fasting window with the hormonal dysregulation. Now, what happened to me was that I started getting migraines every fortnight, literally on the dot, every Wednesday.
Wow.
I would get a migraine, it would come on, and if I didn't catch it early enough with medication, which had to be migraine medication, because I went to a neurologist about it. I thought it was like, what's going on? And if I didn't catch it, I'd start vomiting, and I just couldn't stop. So I had to stop. I had to stop fasting, and I had to start eating 3 meals a day and getting my calorie intake up. And literally, all my symptoms stopped. I also put on a lot of weight around my viscera. Yeah, when I was around my stomach.
Yeah.
Now, also, I was fasting while I was going through menopause. So I'm 54 years old. So I started fasting probably 51, and I found like my hot flashes got a lot worse. I increased my fat laying down, and my muscle mass just disappeared. Now, this
Wow.
is me. I since have also done a genetic test that says that I really, based on my gene, don't do well with fasting longer than 5 hours. So that was really interesting to find out, and it kind of backed up. But really, I did that genetic test last year, I realized that fasting was not good for me prior to that.
Yeah.
So everyone's really individual about it, and I think it's really important that you listen to your body. As a female especially, just sort of ask yourself, should I be going without that level of protein? You know that protein and fat is what makes your hormones, and if we're losing too much protein intake, then we do run a risk. And I've been listening to David Sinclair lately. I love him. He's awesome, but I just can't do what he suggests, which is eat less often, meaning he only eats one meal a day. And if I did that, I'd start spiraling again. I've got my, I dropped the body fat, and I've started increasing muscle mass, but I literally couldn't exercise hard enough. I didn't have enough energy to actually have a good positive exercise response. And so what I ended up doing was quite a lot of zone 1 training, which was really just working my slow twitch muscle fibers to try to burn the fat, which was really, exercising at a pace where I could still hold a conversation, trying to not get into using glucose as an energy source. I was using fat as an energy source, so you have to keep your intensity quite low. So I had to really work on that for quite a long time before I could go into doing sort of higher intensity workouts and shifting into glucose and lactate as an energy source. So it was quite interesting, but that's anecdotal. It's just me. It doesn't mean that everyone is the same. I'm just letting you know my personal experience, and that does not therefore call this a research project.
Yeah. No. It's true. I find, for instance, for my experience, I had I tried it myself, but what I see a lot, and it's funny, is we're talking about fasting, although some of the clients that I saw, female, that I saw in the past, the one recurrent things is they were doing a lot and they weren't eating like much throughout the day, and sporadic meal, a lot of binging, and like for one of them in particular, I remember I had to say, look, you surf more than me, you exercise more than me. If you're putting on some weight, is definitely not related to lack of exercise, is related to the fact that you don't eat enough food.
Actually, interestingly, when I also did my genetic test, it was interesting that I found out that I had some high levels of inflammation, and exercise was actually, the more I exercised, the more I created more inflammation. So I had to actually have a spell where I had to really drop like half. I literally had to cut it in half, the amount of exercise I was doing, to actually help me repair enough to try to get back to normal levels. So yeah, you did right. You have to, it is individual, but you do have to look at whether people are not just under eating but also over exercising. And if they're not moving weight, then you've got to decide, what is the biggest hit there. Everyone will be individual for that. I do follow time restricted eating. I love the work of Sachin Panda, and time restricted eating means that I finish my dinner by 7 p.m. and then I don't eat my breakfast until, if I'm starving, I'll eat it at 8 a.m., but I'll try to push it out to 8:30. So I'll come into work, see a client, and then at 8:30 I'll have my breakfast, sort of situation. And so that's time restricted eating. You're giving your body a good window to rest, because what happens is it takes about 5, maybe 6 hours to digest your food, and then you need some rest. So you need to actually make sure that window of you finish your digestion, Now you've got no food coming in for the next 6 hours, and now you had rest. Now you start to get a response where your body can take care of other clearing out tissues, repairing cells. And I think one really important factor too is that if you eat late into the night, like after it's got dark, once melatonin, which is the hormone of darkness, it gets released very strongly at darkness, but it starts to be released slightly beforehand. But if melatonin is released, it literally tells your pancreas to go to sleep. So you are not going to utilize the sugars that are in your system. They're going to sit in your system overnight. So really important to not eat too late at night. So some of the fasting windows were finishing about 8 p.m. at night, and people were eating after dark. And so they weren't actually properly getting rid of, their sugar levels in their system overnight, and it was sitting there. That creates inflammation as well. And so I really make sure now, especially in the winter, I try to finish the food before it's dark. And that's just something I do for myself, and I try to advise with clients, and that's also work from Sachin Panda, he's great. The CHEK Institute is who he does all his research with.
Okay, cool. I will look it up for sure. Yeah. It's interesting. How are we going with time?
I probably have to finish in about 10 minutes, Gio, sorry.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
I have to go rescue my child.
Fantastic. Great. One other things that I wanted to ask you is, what is it? I wanted to ask you something else. I can't remember.
Oh, that's such a shame. That's okay.
Yeah.
So I feel like what's really important for me, and where I'm really working with now, is actually really looking forward to the later years in my life.
Yeah.
And I would like to sort of prepare people for that, because I think that, from your 40s onwards, these beautiful little furnaces that create our energy called our mitochondria, they start declining. And a lot of us kind of underestimate that when you turn 50 or when you turn 40, you've still got maybe another 60 years of living. And what I'm really working on at the moment is really educating people around making sure that those last years of your life are actually really exciting and really healthy and really fun. I want to still be able to get on the trampoline with my kids or grandkids when I'm in my 80s. I do it at the moment. And I love the fact that I can get on a trampoline and flip myself around and do crazy stuff. But my point is, I don't want to be limited by disease and lack of health in my older years. And, one of the things that David Sinclair says that I really love, he wrote a book called Lifespan, is that he says that aging is actually and should be seen as a disease and should be treated aggressively. We don't have to accept it. And I think that one of the things that we really want to make sure that we do is we look at preparing ourselves for those later years now, like even in your 30s. I mean, it's we start aging as soon as we're born ultimately, but when you can make changes towards your health and being in a better health state, then it's going to lead towards a longer and happier and healthier lifespan. I hope I'm still working in my 80s. I'd like to live a lot longer than my grandparents lived. And my mum is 80. She's still skiing. She gets really annoyed when she goes skiing and the weather closes in, and she gets cabin fever, and she complains to me. And while I'm sitting here working, going, "Oh, Mum, you've got a great life. What are you complaining about?" But I want to make sure that I am like that, and that I live really long and well. And I think that what I've learned over the years from Paul Chek about how to be healthy is like, and look at all the factors around you where it's not just movement, it's not just exercise, it's not just hydration, it's not just thoughts, it's not just community, it's all of them together. It's not just sleep, it's everything
Yeah.
Can you throw any one of those elements or foundations out and still be healthy? Well, I don't believe you can. So health is hard work. There's no easy way around it. We have to actually, have a chat with ourselves and go, hey, I'm going to do some work here because this is going to take work.
Yeah.
And every now and again, you can have a wee cheat and a wee treat, and your body will deal with it.
Yeah.
And so, if you are doing all your great healthy approaches to life, like your time restricted eating or your exercise 5 days a week, and maybe on the weekend you have a day off, enjoy it and let it happen. Your body will deal with it. But if you're doing it regularly, it's not going to be able to deal, and it's not going to be able to recover and heal, and therefore aging will start kicking in. So let's go hard with work hard. It's not an easy ride. Sometimes I just want to cheat and have a little bit of fun, and sometimes I'm like, no, this is the week to take care of myself because maybe I cheated a little bit the weekend before.
It actually came back to mind what I wanted to prompt you on, but also I thought about it, the same things. It came up another question, or whatever, not another question, but another comment that I hear a lot from people that to me, that they said, the body is wearing and tearing, is breaking down, and etc. And so with that excuse, I can throw everything, I can just not look after myself and so forth. And I feel like that, exactly how important is looking after your health from as long as you can make your own decision, to extend your life, but not necessarily your life, but the quality of life of the year that you live. I have the pleasure of working with this man. He's 92 years old, and he's super sharp in his mind. He's definitely better than me at counting and and doing heaps of other stuff. And also, he was a great sportman, and he's always had I guess it's genetically as well, perhaps, but he's still move and etc. And I feel like he's an inspiration, because the doctor, he told me, the doctor asked me, can you walk 500 meters? And he said to the doctor, well, I walk 2K every day.
Oh my goodness. Yes. And you know what? It's not just about genetics. It's how you live with and take care of your epigenome, epi meaning above the gene. So it's the lifestyle factors that allow you to express your genetics now. So I don't think we can just say, oh, it's in my genes, therefore I'm just going to accept defeat, or I can go cheat the system. You still have to be able to work with how the genes are expressed. One of the hardest things I had to do with my genetic test was I had to stop coffee and all dark chocolate. I've been doing it long enough now that I can cheat once a week, maybe. But if I notice, and the things that tell me if I'm inflamed, and my hands tell me I have trouble working. If I notice my hands are no good, there's no way I'm going to cheat with coffee, because already it's going to be an added problem to make my hands even worse. So people who think that they're just going to throw in the towel and, I'm just going to accept, I'm going to break down anyway, it's not truly correct. And it's just going to continue to ramp up and get worse and worse. It's not like if you give in, you're still going to continue to age and have dysfunction and be quite potentially quite miserable. There's a lot of years you're still going to be able to survive. Even if you're not living well. And that's what I mean about don't underestimate how many years there are. And do you want those years to be where you're just walking around with a kind of a dead body and your mind is not good anymore? Or do you want to actually be in those later years in a really excited, joyful and energetic place, because it's entirely possible. And some of the research coming out of Harvard and I guess in Sinclair's lab is that they are finding some ways to reverse aging. And one of the tests I'm going to ask when it becomes cheaper to do, I'm going to get my clients to do, is I'm going to get them to test their biological age. And I'm hoping that that will be a motivator for them. You know, let's bring that biological age down. Doesn't matter if you're 54. What if your biological age says you're like 38? Wouldn't that be amazing?
Wow.
And use that as a motivator. I'm hoping the tests get cheaper, but at the moment it's a bit hard to do.
Yeah. Are you going, or you finished?
I might have to. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'd love to keep chatting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just want to make sure that you are on time and doing your things. I don't want to take more of your time. And just to throw the last things there. And the same is for my mom. My mom has been going through some issue with her knees, and I feel like mentally is really important to have that mental attitude to be strong and to say to yourself that you can do it, and because she's been having trouble walking up and down the stairs, my brother jumped in straight away and said, oh, they have to start thinking about it moving from the house. And I said, no way, like she's 70, she's not 90. And she's doing a bit of work with me, so hopefully I can help her out with her knees and her.
And I do think arthritic changes, that's a form of inflammation, number one. And you got to look at potentially what's inflaming the person. So it can be a number of things from, food intolerances to alcohol intake to sugar intake, to, like we talked about, having your meals ready or eating late into the night. Those things that create what they call inflammaging, which is like inflammatory aging. But also arthritic changes can be about a joint that's not being stabilized by healthy muscle contraction around it. And if one muscle on one side of the joint is pulling too hard and the other one is weak, you get shear forces in the joint, and that creates an element of wear and tear. And if you can control that with your strength training and your stretching and your conditioning, then you will limit the amount of inflammation, and then you also back that up with the inflammatory control in your lifestyle as well. I find for inflammatory joints, I tend to do lots of static holds, where I don't take the joint and beat it up by doing lots and lots and lots of reps. But doing body weight related stuff is great. So sometimes you get them off their feet and take them out of that painful position. They can do a lot of hip and leg strengthening to help unload the knee. And as you said, that bunion, if she's got a big toe that's coming across and inwards, then she's pushing off her foot inwards, which means the leg's turned in, which means the knee is rotating. So again, that comes from strength in the hips. And also sometimes with bunions, people with bunions, I get them to put a spacer in between their big toe and their second toe to put that foot into the better position so they can load the big toe properly.
Yeah, I got her to buy one of those 5-finger spacer to start with, and doing a bunch of exercises, obviously.
There's a great little silicone spacer you can get, just a single one that sits between the big toe and the second toe, and it's quite comfortable.
All right.
Made of silicone, so it's it's non-allergenic, and a lot of pharmacies sell those. They're really great, and you can wear them during the day while shoes are on.
Great, fantastic. Thank you so much, Suzi. I don't want to hold you for longer. Go and get your son and enjoy your weekend.
Enjoy Fun Day Friday.
Yeah. Sunday, Friday. Thank you so much. Let's catch up again. Let's do another one to those topics that we discussed at the beginning when no one was listening. And thank you so much. It was a pleasure. And I may see you in August. Are you coming for IMS 3 or?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, then I see you in Sydney in August.
Awesome.
Until
Hopefully.
then, enjoy.
Fingers crossed. Thank you,
Yes.
Gio. Take
Thank
care.
you so much. It was great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye,
Bye.
Gio.